Ukraine. We should talk now. The first atomic bomb used in warfare, dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima in 1945, killed about 140,000 people. The second atomic bomb used in war, dropped on Nagasaki a few days later, killed a similar number of people. The Hiroshima bomb had a yield equivalent to about 15,000 to 20,000 tons of TNT. On the right is the Castle Bravo explosion of the first deliverable hydrogen or thermonuclear bomb in 1954, a bomb that could be placed on an intercontinental ballistic missile and fired over the poles to Russia. This was 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. 15 million tons of TNT. It was far more powerful than expected, and it remains the most powerful hydrogen bomb explosion tested by the United States. As I speak, the United States and Russia, the two major nuclear powers in the world, with thousands of these hydrogen bombs on intercontinental ballistic missiles, are engaged in their most direct and severe military confrontation ever, with tens, probably hundreds of thousands already killed in the Ukraine. The Cuban Missile Crisis, often considered the closest the world has come to global thermonuclear war, only killed one person, the pilot, Major Rudolph Anderson, an American. The world is probably the closest it ever has been to global thermonuclear war. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, founded by Albert Einstein and colleagues in the 1940s, agrees. They have placed their so-called doomsday clock at 90 seconds to midnight, midnight representing global thermonuclear war. This is the closest it's ever been, even closer than the Cuban Missile Crisis. A 10-megaton hydrogen bomb, or thermonuclear bomb, detonated at Moffett Field, a likely military target, would destroy almost everything within a 10-mile radius, killing close to 2 million people immediately. In addition, there would be blast and radiation damage well beyond the red circle, many people killed or injured outside the red circle. If the bomb was set off during the dry season, huge firestorms would likely occur up in the hills and forests around the Bay Area. The Russian SS-18 ICBMs that frightened people in the 70s and 80s at the peak of the Cold War could launch over the poles one of these giant 10 to 25 megaton warheads. More often, they were loaded with 10 550 kiloton warheads, which could distribute the destruction more evenly over the population or multiple military targets throughout the Bay Area or anywhere in the world. Russia has upgraded its ICBMs and explosive bombs to an unknown degree in the last couple of decades. At this point, every international disarmament agreement for nuclear weapons has been suspended, several by the United States. In this time frame, the last couple decades, Russia has produced new, larger ICBMs and probably more powerful and destructive hydrogen bombs on those ICBMs. What in the world is the United States doing in Ukraine? What is the goal? What is the end game? What is the strategy here? How does it serve the interests of the United States or indeed the world? It looks a lot like the United States and our policy leaders like President Biden, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland, and others are bleeding Russia, are trying to weaken it through a sustained conflict. Perhaps an analogy to the war in Afghanistan in the 80s. Trying to reproduce perhaps the end of the Cold War, a further disintegration of the Russian Federation. The end of the Cold War was an exceptional event. I lived through it. It was totally unexpected. Nobody saw it coming. It was just a complete surprise, really almost unprecedented in human history. No one saw that the Berlin Wall would get torn down, or that the Soviet Union would withdraw its military forces from Eastern Europe and many of the Soviet republics that are now independent nations, such as Ukraine. The cost of the Soviet war in Afghanistan probably contributed in some way, but it's unlikely to have been the primary cause. Russia is a huge country, even today, with 140 million people, thousands and thousands of nuclear weapons to this day, huge amounts of oil, natural gas, mineral resources, and technical expertise. Russia/the Soviet Union was not defeated on the battlefield at the end of the Cold War. Rather, they instituted reforms. They changed their economic and political system with mixed results. They were, quote, defeated, unquote, on the battlefield of ideas, not in a hot war like in Ukraine, not in gambling with nuclear war, but because of ideas. It's time to talk. We are gambling with global thermonuclear war every day that the conflict in Ukraine continues. And it has been escalating with more and more weapons, more deaths. It's harder and harder to back down. The more people who die, the more resources that are consumed. It is time to talk. It is a choice between gambling with the release and use of thousands of devices like the Castle Bravo. We don't know what this would do. It would certainly kill hundreds of millions immediately. There are many more deaths from radiation fallout. It could lead to the extinction of the human race through nuclear winter, massive radioactive fallout effects, or other unknown effects that would occur when thousands of these weapons are released, detonated in a matter of perhaps only hours or at most days. We've been here before. The solution is good fences make good neighbors. Most likely, Russia will end up in control of many of the Russian-speaking areas it already controls and retain control. In 1953, President Eisenhower, newly elected, went to Korea. He talked with the Koreans, the Chinese, the Russians, and they agreed to establish what amounted to a wall between North and South Korea, which has kept the peace, however unpleasant in some cases, for 70 years. We can agree to disagree and establish fortifications and other specific measures to make it very difficult or hopefully impossible for either side, either Russia or the U.S., NATO, and Ukraine, to cheat, to invade the other again, just as happened in Korea. It's not an ideal solution. It is the most likely solution, however, and our leaders need to talk to Russia about this. Use the hotline, go through third parties, whatever it takes. Both nations, Russia and the United States, are gambling with their destruction. Global thermonuclear war. Think about it. Write to your congressmen, your senators, your president. Call them. Have in-person meetings. Ask them to explain what is the goal here. What is the exit strategy? How do we avoid global thermonuclear war? This is the time to talk. This concludes this video presentation. If you like this video, please click like. Please click subscribe and the notification bell if you would like to receive more content from us. You can avoid internet censorship by subscribing directly to our RSS news feed. Please consider sharing the link by email and on your website or blog, in addition to liking, upvoting, or sharing on increasingly censored, advertising-beholden, big company social media. We have encountered such censorship. Mathematical software is developing algorithms and software to automate data analysis, reducing the risks of costly errors and increasing the predictive power of the results. You can support our work financially by subscribing on our Patreon page, https://www.patreon.com/mathsoft, or scanning the QR code in the lower right corner.